Hello everybody, welcome back to Cities Skylines. This episode we are going to be following on from what I've been talking about the last couple of episodes, where I've been saying that I'm going to be finally fixing up the cargo rail for my city, seeing as we took away the rail connections from the cargo ports. I will be creating a whole separate section just for the cargo rail, where containers will probably be shipped from the port directly to the rail yard, and then they will be then loaded from there to be sent off wherever they are needed around the area. That's what we're going to be doing here. I had those couple two that I had from the last few episodes, but I'm getting rid of those and expanding the area that we're in, because I need a little bit more room than what we had before. I'm going to be using these default, this is I think the vanilla rail yard, and I'll be doing this layout that we have here. If you look up any rail yards online, you'll see they use this, have all these dead ends where they will all converge into a single line or two, and then go out from there. So that'll be where the trains get stored. It's not a ton compared to some places in the world. I've actually looked up online to get some inspiration, so I don't really know how they're laid out from experience. So I do a little bit of research, and you know, some of them are huge. Like I looked at the one in Paris, absolutely massive compared to this one that I've got here. But still, it's a smaller city. I'm not the size of Paris, and I can't be doing a country the size of a real country unless it's Monaco or the Vatican. So it will be smaller than some of the other large train stations in the world, but still it should be enough to accomplish what I want here, to be somewhat functional as a cargo or rail port. So I've got now this double track station, which I think is a little bit more realistic for the area. I've been changing out the rails for this. I think it's German rail is what it's supposed to be. It's more like a German rail pack from the workshop. And I am using that on the ground. I'm going back to the vanilla one for the elevated sections. This is another, it's a realistic warehouse looking cargo rail station. Put that down there, having a little bit extra capacity and having it more than just this one building with this one tiny warehouse is probably good for realism. So put down the other one there. It's in the background. I created that little offshoot where there is I guess like a maintenance depot of some kind for the trains. So I've put another one in a little bit later on, but for now there's that big warehouse there where they build trains, I guess, or put them together, or maybe they just do modifications or inspect them or something. Not really too sure. Just putting down some offices that'll be for the companies that are running the shipyard, not the shipyard, the rail yard, or for the train companies or people who are just working out logistics of when trains are going to be going into the rails, are going to be coming in and out, and when making sure the rails are free for at a certain time when they're expecting a shipment, that kind of stuff. So I'm imagining that's kind of maybe what these little offices are here. So as I mentioned last time, there'll be offices around the area to fill out the area, and they'll just be for things that make sense in your head. Just doing a little bit of extra detailing. There was a little bit of a seam there where the terrain was the incorrect level, so I'm just putting down some bins and stuff to fix up that little seam. And of course, if you've ever seen any rail yards, then you've probably seen how they have all these train carts normally backed up, where they're there for storage or because they don't work or something. I'm not really sure. I guess they're just for storage, where it's not their turn or they're waiting on something before they go out. So I went to go get a few assets, and I'll be putting down these container rails there to add some detail using the Bob mod, which is super handy here because I could just select it and I could just change the assets at the end for, I wanted that little buffer at the end instead of the smaller one. And I could just use the Bob mod so I don't have to manually put them down. They just automatically would just change the asset that's associated with that rail. So super handy there. And we'll just be putting a fence around the outside so we don't have people coming into the rail yard. I assume that's just the thing that we generally don't want. Don't want those damn kids getting into any accidents and getting run over by a cargo train. I've seen enough videos on YouTube to know how many silly teenagers narrowly escape death from rails. Just gonna be putting down some foliage here. I had this one asset that was, it had the foliage embedded into the track, but I didn't really like the look of it. So I decided to keep this one I've got here and just manually put down grass and stuff instead. I maybe go a little overboard. I like to look at these areas where there's not really going to be many people walking very often, so they would get a little bit overgrown. Maybe I do it a little bit too much. When you're, especially when you get down to ground level, it can look a bit denser than maybe is realistic. But I like the look. I'm sort of cleaning out a little bit of it there, but still, I do like the look. So maybe I'll just leave it for a little bit. I've got this little empty space here where I'm sort of just trying to figure out what I can put down to fill it out. That's sort of the main problem that I had with this area, where once you've got in the vanilla, you just have a train station attached to a rail and that's it. You don't need any of this. This is all just to appear realistic for you guys, because I just like making realistic cities. So once I put down all the stuff that I need to, it's kind of hard to figure out, how exactly am I going to fill out all the rest of this area, where in real life I'm sure they are just fine with filling out the stuff that they need, but I don't know what they need, so I'm just trying to use the assets that I've got to make it look nice. There I was putting down a shipyard for any ships need any maintenance, I guess, or I don't think maybe they just build them there, but I thought maybe if they would need a shipyard in case a ship came in and it needs some fixing of some kind. Seemed like a thing a port would have, so put that down there. And I'm just trying to figure out what I can put down in all these other separate areas. So putting down some warehouses for various train things and train bits. I don't really know exactly what they would need, but I assume they would need them for reasons. So I'm going to put down this other train depot, which has a rail connection, though I don't actually end up hooking that up. And now I'm just trying to find random things in my asset list. You can see I've got a huge list of assets. I'm just putting down stuff that kind of looks like it could belong. So I've got this tanker of fuel, down these cranes, put down these temporary offices, these things that kind of I would think that would be around the area, tanks for various things, put down more buildings and cranes. That's just kind of what I'm be doing for a lot of this area, where I'm just trying to look through my list and be like, yeah, that looks like that would probably belong there. I'll put it down. Here I put these little storage sheds down, and I did put down these container ports again for some storage, but then I found this distribution center. So I put that down because it looked so super good. And I figured, this is the area where the port is. This is where the cargo rail is. The distribution center seems like something that's on brand for this area. So I'm putting this down. It makes sense that it will be here. Whether this is the, company that deals with trucking the cargo to the commercial businesses in the city, or maybe they are also helping coordinate the movement from moving the containers from the container yard maybe to this cargo area, where they can then load them onto trains to bring them wherever they're going. Just trying to, in my head I'm putting these things down, trying to think up how I can imagine them being implemented. Again, I don't necessarily have to do that. I could just probably show footage of them being there, and the end effect looks good. So I don't really necessarily have to do that, but I kind of like doing it a little bit. Not getting too crazy. I don't want to drive myself crazy thinking, does this make economic sense for this building to exist right here? It's about the overall effect. But still, when I'm, commentating these, I'd like to talk about my thoughts for doing things. Otherwise, why am I even talking to you guys? I've got these big, sort of North American looking double-decker, I guess it's like an intercity train. I say they're North American. They kind of remind me of the ones in, I think, Canada. But I think, France has them too, so probably not accurate to call them American looking. But I put those down there because, again, I just found them in the asset list. I'm like, that makes sense that they would be there. So giving a little bit of extra variety, you can imagine maybe they were like a train that had some technical issues and they had to come into our yard here to get looked at. Speaking of which, this is what I'm doing here again, because I had the shed at the back that you saw, but I also saw when I was looking at pictures these sort of really long sheds where they would just drive the train directly into the rail. But instead of the other one, this is like a really long, thin one where the whole train can fit in. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. I'm getting these warehouses, and then I'll just run a rail into it, even though the game doesn't, know what's going inside that building, obviously. So that's just to give the look of it being another maintenance depot for these trains. I was sort of struggling a bit to figure out how to, because trains, they're not good at going around sharp corners. So I had to try and make the trains get in here with the least amount of curve as possible. So I'm trying to make it as straight as I can. I end up having to go up and around the outside here. And I don't know if this is it's a bit of a curve and quite steep for a rail anyway, but still just doing my best to see what I can do. Got another little offshoots here. If we need to get like a train out the way for one to leave the shed, and then just do a little bit more detailing around here, wherever there isn't probably going to be many people hanging around. It's the areas that kind of get abandoned, but it also looks kind of cool, so it looks more abandoned but also better. Maybe got a little bit crazy with the foliage. If anything, I overdo it, like I mentioned just earlier actually. So I think maybe I overdid it. Let me know, but I think it does look good even if it is a bit overdone. A couple more offices, whether they're to do with the shipping industry or if they're just, there was some space here so they put down an office and a business hired it out and it just happens to be near the rail. Either way, don't know. It could be just a business who deals with shipping train repair supplies and employing the mechanics. Who knows? But anyway, put down all of the offices and then for whatever you think that they would realistically be used for. Putting down little gardens where I can't think of anything else to do. I always think about wherever I have some offices, I always think, where am I going to put something at least a little bit nice where you could expect employees to be able to go during their lunch break if they wanted to. Because you always think something like that, or I'd hope you'd always think to have something like that in any business. So if there's just a little extra space there, a little park is always a good way to fill it up along with, car parks and stuff like that. They're just very easy and simple to implement. Here's this little side diversion where I figured that maybe I should have some kind of fire department especially, but also some healthcare and police nearby. I assume, like a lot of you, I do the thing where once you think about it, you're like, oh, well, I should just put them all down at once and they're all like right next to each other. I think that's super weird, so I'm sure you guys probably do the same thing if you're if you guys are City Skylines players. You're like, oh shit, I haven't put any of them in. Let's put them all in within 3 feet of each other. So I'm just doing here. It's just to get like the area started and functioning, and then obviously it looks a bit empty right now because it is, but I will be filling out that area a little bit later on once I figure out what's going to go, you know, behind it. Once I start filling out the area, it'll look a lot nicer. Here's just another warehouse for some company of some kind, just to make the area look a little bit more lived in and alive. And here I'm just putting back in a few of these cargo container areas, ports, where they were just temporary storage for some containers, I guess, if that's a thing that makes sense, before they get loaded onto the trains. And a little warehouse, and then I just like the look of having this little office tucked in behind, where it's probably not a great work environment with the train yard right next to you, the tracks. I mean, you get a good view of seeing all the trains go by, which would be pretty sweet. But yeah, that'll be just maybe a company that is dealing with the logistics of the containers and figuring out when they are coming in and out. Again, just trying to fill out that little area, put down a few just old looking offices that look like they weren't too nice that they couldn't be bulldozed when they needed it, which I assume is kind of realistically what would probably be there. And again, just a few little patches of grass. I think really livens up this area and makes it look a lot more realistic than it did beforehand. You can see that rail there peeking out like a little groundhog peeking his little head out, but I don't really end up hooking that up, so I don't know, maybe that's an old one that isn't used anymore. Here again, like I mentioned, like I have this big asset list. Like there, I put down those basketball courts for the employees to use while at lunch. But I'm just going down this huge list of assets that I have, and I'm just finding stuff that I'm like, yeah, that could probably be in this area. I found these crates and barrels. I'm like, yeah, sure, that would probably be there. So I'm putting stuff down, and to the end, like it looks pretty good. I'm really happy with how it turns out. And it's just like, it looks like maybe I even planned it to look this way in some ways, but yeah, it's just me putting stuff down, and it really ends up a good effect with these tractors. And I put a little generator there. I put some little like, oh, this is a little toll booth, not toll booth, the like a security check-in, where you can imagine there would be a check-in to get into this area, because it's like a restricted area, a fenced off area. And these little tanks here, some little there's the vending machines for the people during lunch. Ends up looking quite detailed, like I know what I'm doing, even though I am just putting down random crap that I find. So that's my lesson. Just put down random crap, and maybe if you put down enough, it looks like it was supposed to be like that. Here again was I was looking through assets, and I found these trains here. I think these are assets I downloaded. I downloaded like a functional version, which I was planning to use for my metro, and so I found them, and then I will decide to put them here, because if I have lots of metro trains, then it makes sense. If one of them had an issue, or they were getting modified or something, then they could be brought here to be worked on. I don't know how they would get there, seeing as the metro and the trains aren't connected, so that doesn't necessarily make sense. But I've got a rail maintenance yard, and I'm using these trains in the metro, so I don't think it's super weird for it to end up here somehow. Maybe it's just one that's out of commission or something. So yeah, I will at some point be thinking of put those as my metro trains. Again, just another little office of some description, and then a little bit of detailing around the outside. Here was a little patch where I didn't know what to do, so I thought, I could put down another office, but it seemed a bit boring. I've done a few of them already, so I'm just making this little, I'd say garden, but it's probably just like it's been left and overgrown a little bit, but it's still like a slightly nice place where you can go for a little sit amongst the trees during your lunch if you want to. And I'm just changing out the roads because I wasn't loving that kind of really crappy concrete looking roads there. So I'm doing something that these ones are the medium, which kind of still differentiate themselves to look a bit more industrial than the rest of the city, but look nicer still. And here I just, there's a little patch I didn't really know what to do. So I'd put down these temporary office assets and a few little bins and stuff where, you can imagine they're just dumping stuff. And, they're some company that's helping out in the rail yard. They've got these temporary offices for some people who needed them, and then inevitably they become permanent because they never want to build real stuff. So that's just kind of like, I don't know, when I look at the other area, I'm just like, yeah, I can imagine that existing, which is what I hope to achieve with any of the stuff I make here. A lot of car parking, probably more than obviously I have said I wanted to have. Maybe this area is of course like a like I mentioned last episode, these are left over from an older time where this city was maybe a bit more car centric, and the newer areas down the city and the new housing developments are progressive, and as these areas develop they will become a bit more better use of the land and not having these big open car parks. But for industrial, I'm imagining it, I always think of it as going to be like an older, less nice area. So I think it kind of makes sense that I could have a big parking lot for all of these companies and the big rail yard employees and such. These, put these office buildings down here. Not really sure what they are. Again, they could probably be some company that deals with something that's getting shipped in and out a lot, so they would like to be somewhere near the shipping area. But of course this whole area is fenced off, so it could just be a government or more secretive or a more classified company that wants to be somewhere that is has some more security. So it could be some biotech company or whatever that just wants to be in this area that's got a fenced off area with the security cards to get in. Who knows? I'm not here to dictate what every single building is, even if it is kind of exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, I think this is pretty much the end of this whole rail yard section. It's a lot better than the rail yard that we got at the beginning. This little extra area here, I'm just doing a little, again, park area, which was just like, partly is a bit just overgrown because it's left and abandoned, but partly is kind of nice as a place where people actually want to walk, so carve this little trail through it. So yeah, this is the end of this episode. Let me know what you think of the area. And at the end of the episode, of course, we have some footage at the end to show off the stuff that I made. So hopefully you'll stick around for that. And if you like this episode, hopefully you'll join me for the next one.